Hi guys, Jamie Humphries here for Six String Alliance, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at the MXR Power 50 Tom Morello signature overdrive pedal. So before we kick off with today's demo, you might have noticed that I've taken a little bit of break from YouTube. It's been a bit of a weird January. We got really ill, my entire family. We had COVID and then we all got flu directly on top of it. So we had a few weeks of sort of nursing each other. It was a really weird month. And then I was playing catch up with my studio work as well as filming some interviews for the channel that I have to edit, and also really making some headway with the Six String Alliance guitar course, with the beginner's course. I had so much work on that something had to give, so I decided to sit back from YouTube just to catch up. But I'm now back and we've got some content coming over the next few weeks. So today we're going to take a look at the MXR Power 50. Now, I've had this pedal a little while, had a chance to play with it and try different applications. We're going to talk about that in a moment. But this pedal is based on Tom Morello's Marshall JCM 800 2205, which is an amplifier that he's used throughout his entire career for all of his recordings and his live work. So he's been using the same amplifier for the past 30 years. Now that makes Tom quite an unusual guitar player. Obviously guitar players swap and chop and change their gear, but he kind of found a rig that worked for him, that Marshall head and that PV cabinet and his effects and the way that he ran the effects. He marked out the settings on the amp, and that was it. That was his sound. And he stuck with that sound throughout his entire career. Now, the Power 50 is an amp in a box style pedal, and it's very similar, I guess, in its concept to the 5150 pedal that MXR released, the Van Halen pedal, which I love so much. I have too. And that pedal really works great. Now, I've already mentioned about a couple of different applications. You can obviously run this pedal into the front of your amplifier, or you can use it as a standalone preamp pedal and use it with either software-based or hardware-based speaker emulation, which is the route that I've gone for this demo. There's some fantastic demos already on YouTube. Pete Thorne's demo is great as ever. And there's also a really cool demo done by Tom Morello himself. And he uses a wide variety of different amplifiers, and they plug the Power 50 in, and he manages to replicate his sound. But I couldn't help but thinking that there's obviously going to be a certain amount of influence that the tone of the amp has on the pedal. I normally use my mini rec, and that's going to have a certain sound regardless of what pedal you plug into it. So I thought I'd do something a little bit different for this demo. And I did this once before when I was demoing the Cab M, or the Cab M Plus software update for the Cab M unit by 2 Notes. And I used the 5150 pedal and went direct and used one of their DynIRs and their power amp modeling, and was absolutely blown away by the results. And my flyboard is actually made up of different preamp pedals and using the Cab M. So I thought for this demo, I would do something a little bit different. Instead of just plugging it directly into an amplifier, I'm running the pedal straight into the front of my audio interface, and I'm using 2 Notes wall of sound, and I'm using a Celestion DynIR, a vintage 30, and I'm using some EL34 power amp emulation. So now let's have a look at the pedal itself. The pedal replicates the controls on Tom's amp. We have the volume control, we have a bass control, we have a mid-range control, we have a treble control, and we have the gain control. And then down here, we have a presence control. So it's the same layout as we see on his Marshall. And the team at MXR have really painstakingly replicated the tone of the amp. They're using MOSFET technology within this pedal to help them produce that sound of his amplifier, and hopefully that the pedal will react in a similar way to the amplifier. Now, that's not all. This pedal also has an effects loop. And the reason being is that Tom runs all of his effects into the effects loop of his amp. Yeah, he doesn't run his wah-wah pedal into the front. He runs it into the effects loop, and his whammy pedal and whatever pedals, what else he's using. I think he uses a flanger, and he uses a graphic EQ. I could be wrong. There's probably more pedals that he's using, but he runs them all into the effects loop. Now, what that does is having the effects loop on the pedal means that you're inserting the effects sort of between the preamp stage of the pedal and the presence control. So it really does affect the tone of the wah-wah and the other effects. It has a very different sound, which is very Tom Morello. Okay, so now let's have a listen to the pedal. I've set all of the controls in the middle, and even the presence control. I'm onto the bridge humbucker of this guitar, the humbucking P90, and let's have a listen. Straight away, it's got that amp feel to it. It has a very kind of martially tone. Let's try increasing the gain. Let's push that up to about 3 o'clock. Got a lot of balls. It's quite bottom-endy, this pedal. That was one of the things that I did notice about it. When I was setting up the sound for the demo track, I thought, let's start off by looking at some pictures of Tom's amp. And so I sort of tried to copy the EQ settings, and he has the bass control wound all the way up, and it's quite, it does get a little bit flubby on the low end, so you have to watch the bass control. Let's turn the gain control all the way up. So this is full gain. That sounds fantastic. It really does sound great, and it feels nice to play. It's amazing that you can plug an effects pedal in and use impulse responses and power amp emulation, and it sounds like I'm playing through an amp. So let's drop the gain down a little bit. We started off halfway. I don't want to drop it down too low. Obviously, I'm using it as a preamp. If I turn it down too low, you're probably not going to get any sound. Yeah, so it cleans up, but I think really if you're sort of pushing it towards the halfway, it starts to come alive around halfway or just past the halfway mark, or at least in this application. Obviously, we're not running it into a preamp of an amp. We are using this as the preamp. Let's experiment with the EQ. Let's drop the bass. You can hear that's a very responsive control. Turn that all the way up. There's a lot of low end there. I kind of found that I liked having the low end around that sort of 10 o'clock mark. Let's push the gain up. Could probably even pull a little bit off. Let's have a listen to the mid-range control. Let's scoop the mid. It's got a nice mid-range actually. Push that up a bit more. I'm going to be careful that I don't clip my interface. I think that kind of sounds nice around there. Okay, let's have a look at the treble control. So we'll turn that down. Really nice, really nice tone controls. It's amazing how that feels and how that sounds utilizing it in this application, you know, running it as a preamp. I'm just running a stump box into my Mac. And, you know, obviously with the help of the impulse responses, that sounds like a Marshall amp. It will probably do that. Actually, yeah, let's drop the gain slightly. That sounds really cool. And also as well with the, even turning the gain up, I can drop the guitar level. Yeah, it's really responsive. And then down here we have the presence control. So let's try turning that all the way down. Let's start to turn that up. It's going to start adding a little bit of that kind of sparkle on the output stage of the pedal. Maybe a little bit much there, but just sort of past the halfway mark. Now, some of you might be asking, what is the point of plugging an effects pedal into your computer? Why don't you just plug it into an amplifier? I really like this idea of having this amp in a box for a couple of reasons. First of all, space-saving travel rigs, preamp pedal, cab M or something similar with your impulse responses and a couple of stomp boxes or a multi-effects unit. And there's your rig. If you're on a gig and you use something like cab M in conjunction with your amp, and your amp goes down, you know, the gig is not lost. You can use your cab M pedal with the power amp emulation in your DynIRs. That's even got a preamp as well, some preamp modeling, and you can use the Power 50 and you've got an instant Marshall in a box. Or for those of you, you know, that are looking to get into recording and you maybe don't like the sound of using soft amps and you haven't got the budget to be able to afford some kind of elaborate modeling system, you can still get great results with that real sort of analog and organic feel of using an amp by using a preamp bass pedal or an amp in a box style pedal. You know, for instance, if you get Wall of Sound, the 2-note software, you can get that on I think it's like a 30-day trial, something like that, and you get 2 cabinets. And after that stage, when it goes into the demo mode, you only have to buy 1 cabinet, which unlocks the entire software and the 2 free cabs. And I think, you know, the cabs are not very much money. So for probably around €10 or less, you could have your own sort of speaker emulation suite with power amp emulation and EQ and everything, and just plug your stomp box in. So that's another great application and another good reason for looking at a pedal of this type. You know, you can buy it to plug into your amp and use as a stomp box, or you can then, you know, plug it into your audio interface and use something like Wall of Sound, and there you can get some great guitar tones. So another interesting feature of this pedal is the effects loop. As I mentioned before, it inserts the effects between the preamp stage and the presence control. So it's kind of similar to when you run your effects into an amplifier, because obviously the presence control is on the power amp stage. So you're inserting in between the preamp and the power stage. So that's the idea. And running the wah-wah pedal, I've got a Tom Morello wah-wah, signature wah-wah that I'm using. So I'm fortunate enough to have the whole set, which is pretty cool. It's a really striking looking set of pedals. But having it plugged into the effects loop, it really pronounces the tone of the wah-wah. It really exaggerates it. And it's a very aggressive, gnarly sound, which you really associate with Tom sound. You know, you can instantly hear it's his wah-wah tone. Now, there was a section in the demo track where I sort of did the, I think it's the Balls on Parade little riff there where you're going, wow, 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 wow. Wow, 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 wow. It's got such a snarl to the sound of it. Let's push the gain control up on that and go on the neck single coil. Now, obviously, a big part of Tom Morello's playing style is his unorthodox techniques, and he has described himself in the past as the DJ in the band. And inserting the wah-wah pedal into the effects loop, again, it really adds different sonic sort of capabilities to the guitar playing. Now, obviously, with the opening track, I was really trying my best to do an impersonation of Tom Morello. I was like, I've got all this Tom Morello gear, so I'm going to see if I can make some of those tones. So I had a little bit of fun with a slide, but a metal one. It's kind of trying to do some of that sort of scratching, but using the wah-wah pedal as a way of sort of shaping the tone, which it shapes it in such a different way as opposed to if you plugged it into the front end. You know, it really opens up the door for, experimenting with some of the sounds that Tom makes. Now, as well as using the Tom Morello wah-wah, I've got my Whammy 1 out. I've got an original Whammy pedal, which I actually bought when I heard Rage Against the Machine. I used to work in a guitar shop, and they had one in there. It had been in there forever, gathering dust. And I heard Rage Against the Machine before it was released generally. I heard it on import at the Marquee Club and recognised the sound, and went back to the guitar shop where I used to work and said to the boss, "Oh, can I get that pedal?" And I think I had like 70 quid in my pocket and just gave him that. And he regretted it, because obviously once Rage Against the Machine came out, everyone wanted to buy whammy pedals. Now this one, like I said, it's one of the original ones, and it's worth an absolute fortune now. And it has I think it's got a slightly different sound to the newer versions. Now, in terms of the sound, I've got that daisy chain with the wah-wah pedal into the effects loop. And it really, again, there's a real pronounced top end to the whammy effect. Obviously, I was trying to emulate Tom, as I've already said in that opening demo. So I couldn't play a Tom Morello style track without using the whammy pedal. So I did that little climbing pentatonic thing, and was, pushing the whammy down, kind of something like you hear on Killing in the Name Of, but it really does have his sound more so than when you run it into the front of the preamp. You can hear there, it's just got a slightly different attack to the note, which it just sounds different to me running it into the effects loop. Okay, so there we have it. There's the Power 50. I chose to do something different with it. I wanted to see if I could make this sound like a Marshall in a box and use it as a preamp. And I think that it does a pretty good impression of what it sets out to do. Obviously, with the demo track, I wanted to try and recreate some of those legendary tones and sounds that we associate with Tom Morello. If you want to check out a demo of hearing it into the front of an amplifier, obviously there's going to be those of you out there who are more interested in that application, then obviously check out Tom Morello's demo himself, where he's running it into a multitude of different amps. But like I said, there's a lot of demos of that application out there, and I hadn't seen anyone else demoing it as a preamp. So I think it stands up really well. Dunlop stuff, MXR pedals are fantastic. And this is definitely going to be a pedal that I will use. It really does give you that classic JCM 800 style tone. Click the link in the description for more information. And if you don't already, please subscribe to the channel. That's it from me, and I'll look forward to seeing you here very soon for more demos. Bye for now.